Welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony Blanc, and today I'm in conversation with Robert McDowall, and we're going to take a look at economics and politics. Robert, good to see you.
And you as well, Tony. Always good to come on the show. Thank you.
Let's start off with Guernsey and revive and thrive. Now, I was looking through some figures the other day, which estimated the 2020 deficit at 59 million, with projections indicating this will fall to 23 million in 2021. How do they make this calculation? Does it come out of the social security payments they're paying out over and above?
No, the social security payments are not included in that. So this is essentially a reduction in they won't be spending so much on health and the other things that have been exacerbated by COVID, including obviously their own version of furlough and so on. And also, they are, I think, a little optimistically, but it's a personal view, they're looking for a vast reduction in the subsidy to Aurigny this year. But I'm more sceptical on that, but that's a program in itself, I would imagine.
Because the Aurigny subsidy was what, 10 million or something like that, wasn't it?
It's about 10 million, yes, that's correct.
And that would have been included in the 59 million I've just mentioned.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So we'll just have to see what goes on as far as that's concerned. But how do you cover this sort of deficit without borrowing? How do you get around that one?
Well, the other very interesting thing, at the same time, you know the money that was borrowed on the bond about 2013, was it 340 million pounds, I think it was. About 200 million of this has been spent on what we'll loosely call infrastructure, and the other has been invested,
right,
and has done quite well. So what they could also do is take the gains from the investment on that, but of course they still ultimately have to pay back this bond in, what is it, 2040? It's a 30-year bond, 2043. So they could take it from other reserves, but they're always historically they've always been nervous about doing that.
Yeah, but it would make sense if the money's just floating around. Use it.
It would, because, as I say, this 130 odd million, which wasn't used on infrastructure projects, has just been invested in financial markets.
Yeah,
and has, I understand, it's allocated amongst a number, but it's got something like a 6%, 7% return each year, and that would go a long way to covering that deficit.
Traditionally, they had a rainy day fund, which was a built-up reserve over the years. Is that still in existence, or have they spent that?
That some of that is still in existence, and they've obviously other things at the back of their mind on that. One is subject we've covered a lot before, the deficit on the public sector pension, and of course social security. The current social security fund at the current run rate would be zero by the end of the 2038, 2039, something like that. So they can't just fritter away this rainy day fund on a one-off event like that. They have to look towards how they're going to fund social security and pension deficits, and then you get into the debate on whether people should contribute more, public sector civil servants, and also whether social security payments should go up. So that's the other side of it.
I mean, if they don't do something about the social security aspect, it's going to be pay as you go eventually, isn't it?
Ultimately, it's going to be pay as you go. And perhaps I'm a little cynical, but because these are way off aspects, most of the politicians won't be around to face the music. But that's me being cynical. I'm sure they will do their best to safeguard the long-term future.
Carve it in stone.
Yeah, quite.
Now, I understand that you've written a little article or sent a letter to either the press or the journal about the new economic activity return. Can you tell us a bit about this?
Yes, what as part of Revive and Thrive, the bailiwick of Guernsey is looking to see what parts of the economy contribute to the economic well-being, and that's what you might call the gross value added. And then they're also looking at what the GDP is. Now, let me just explain briefly. GDP is the measure of the amount of income generated by individuals and companies on the island. And I mean, in simple terms, individuals' wages, bonuses, benefits, employer social security, pension contributions, rental income also, and income from self-employment. And the contribution GDP from companies is obviously operating income and trading profits, and rental income as well, where they're in that. What interestingly enough is not included in the company side is the gross operating surpluses of local trading finance corporations, which can actually be very substantial in some years, and I think that's a big omission. But what the states of Guernsey is looking is for forms to be filled in so that they can get a grasp on where GDP comes from, which sectors contribute, and how, so that they can base their financial and economic planning on those criteria. It's not something that hits the headlines, but they did change the method of analyzing and reporting both of the GVA and GDP in 2015, 2016 to make it more in line with other jurisdictions, so that you compare like with like. But they are wanting these figures sent in by enterprises, and obviously it is voluntary, and clearly they're also looking for enterprises in Alderney to make their returns as well.
How do the states of Alderney fit in on this one then?
Well, that is a very good question, because this is really down to private enterprises. Maybe the states of Alderney, perhaps through this new economic group, can give some help and guidance on that. I think they would also themselves be very interested and very encouraging that all enterprises should give their contribution to this, because again, it will help the state's economic committee both input to the Revive and Thrive strategy, and also look at particular local peculiarities. So I do hope the state, through that committee, does encourage these returns, and the Chamber of Commerce as well, because clearly the Chamber of Commerce has got about 500-600 businesses.
Yes, quite a few. Yeah,
quite a few. And so
I think it's more a question of representing 500 to 600 potential employees. I don't think the number of businesses is quite as great as that, but nevertheless, that's an interesting thing. But the thing is, Robert, if it's voluntary, are people going to bother?
Well, this is the real problem, because a lot of small businesses say, well, I haven't got time, I don't understand what it is, I'm behind with my paperwork, etc., etc. So my unease is that what I call the larger businesses on this island may well make their returns. The smaller ones may well not do so, and I think they are the ones who will ultimately miss out.
Yeah.
They often moan and groan that they're not properly represented, and their requirements are not taken into account. And so I think it's extremely important that the Chamber of Commerce and the State's Economic Committee does encourage it, and indeed perhaps, if the small enterprise will permit, help them in a very mechanistic way of filling in these returns.
Do you think, though, that ultimately compulsion will take place?
I think it has to. I really do, because things that are voluntary, it's a bit ad hoc. What is your priority, to help the state or to help your own business?
Well, you know, most people would argue to help your own business, wouldn't they?
Well, quite. So I think, so I think it has to be compulsory, and it perhaps is something that could be added on to the tax return. Although the trouble with those is that they are a year or so in arrears. They don't always recognise immediate issue. But I think it does have to be compulsory, and I think it will be compulsory. I mean, there are database tools that can kind of suck data out of tax returns on an anonymized and aggregated basis. But as I say, they're all rather late in the day.
Yeah. Although having said that, the ETI system is a quarterly return, isn't it?
That's actually very good, and that works very well despite initial protestations about it. And I'm sure there's certainly some elements of the requisite data that can be extracted from there, but it doesn't necessarily provide the complete picture.
Yeah. But there we are. So Alderney has its own GDP, does it?
Well, it does. I shall be interested to know what it is, but I certainly would encourage the Chamber of Commerce to get involved in terms of encouraging businesses and actually practically helping businesses to complete these returns as well.
Yeah. What about the economic effect of the demographic here? You know, people living on income, investment income, and pensions. Where do they fit into GDP?
Well, they do and they don't. You see, because obviously, in the sense that they provide tax returns, some is picked up there, but again, those are 1-2 years down the line. In the sense that their tax affairs are such that they pay in a number of jurisdictions, it doesn't. And equally, people who have economic activity abroad, whether it's in the UK or elsewhere, unless it's brought back to here through their tax returns, I don't think will be picked up. So there are some gaps, and obviously people understandably discreet about their activities, but I just wonder how much would be lost through that.
Would you say that to get a true version of GDP, you need to know, for example, how much has taken place in the way of capital gains for individuals?
Well, I think so, because you see, the other thing is, because there's no capital gains tax here, a lot of people will live off their capital gains. You know, they take the minimum income, but they take their gains.
Yeah.
So that leaves a big gap, if you like, in the GDP model.
And of course, with 0-10 on the corporate tax side, once again, that tends to distort, doesn't it?
Well, it does, and it's perhaps another topic. But I think if there were a corporation tax, that would give a better perspective of the corporate economic activity.
Well, I've said this time and time again. You know, from a personal point of view, I'd love to be able to pay the tax on the company every year and get it out the way.
Precisely, and you know, I'm not talking about swinging rates. I mean, I think if there are, as you know, the USA is allegedly looking for jurisdictions to have a minimum corporation tax rate, and you know, we can debate what it is, but I think if Guernsey and Alderney had a 10% rate, I think that would stop any criticism in the future, and I would grasp at that, not because we like tax increases, but it will head off problems further down the road.
And it's not an unreasonable rate, is it? 10%?
I don't think. No, it's not. It's not an unreasonable rate.
And it's coming off the bottom line, isn't it?
Exactly. So much as we don't, I really think that would be the most sensible thing to do.
Yeah.
And ordinary. But anyway.
Now, the other day you sent me through one of Michael Mainelli's webinars, and it was all about the Digital Markets and Services Bill coming from the House of Lords via Lord Holmes. It's not a political initiative, but seeks to set a broad and flexible framework. Should the Channel Islands sometimes sort of say, well, look, let's let the UK come up with this stuff and just do a cut and paste?
I think so, because this will be quite expansive in a number of ways. So, for example, I think there will be some levels of consumer protection. That's both in terms of buying and selling via the web and so on. But also, we all know that technology companies like to build in redundancies and upgrades to what they do, and so there needs to protection on that, protection on archiving. Also, it will also look at some the monopoly natures of things and so on. And I think it's important that, well, not just Guernsey, but Jersey and the island also plug into that, so that they have a similar sort of base legislative requirement. And this is not a jurisdictional issue. I think again, I think further down the line, a lot of businesses will be looking for that this is in place. So I would, if I were the Crown Dependencies, I would support and collaborate it. It's not a, it's not a it shouldn't be
contentious, is it?
It's not contentious. It's non-political, and it's consolidating a lot of various requirements which candidly are required now that the digital market is so large, to put things on a sort of level playing field for both consumers, suppliers, and everyone who uses digital services.
Interesting that it's emanating from the House of Lords. How does it actually find its way into the House of Commons?
Well, what will happen is once they've produced a draft bill, that either on a party basis or maybe as a private member's bill, but with broad support, it will get the backing and sort of go through the House of Commons. But I mean, I think this is a way where the House of Lords can really provide value in producing, in assimilating legislation, which is not the political nature, but is required for the benefit of all.
That's interesting. Now, Jersey and France and the security of the energy supply. Right. I see that our good friend Michel Barnier has now weighed in on it and mentioned the threat yet again of turning off the electricity.
Yes, I mean, one hopes this is just sort of Gallic histrionics, but it does bring home the issue of security of energy supply. And early this year, the UK Energy Minister, Kwasi Kwarteng, did say that the UK was looking to reduce its energy dependency from the EU. And coincidentally, as a result of Brexit agreement, there will be new protocols applying to existing interconnectors, cables between the UK and the EU, and also new ones. And this is a 40-page document full of detailed technicalities on how you compute market price, how much you can take, and so on. The sort of approval of the mechanisms for taking it, very, very detailed stuff. But these are going to have to be renegotiated for existing cables, and of course new ones like the FB or fabric or whatever it may be called, but maybe that's a myth from now on. I don't know. I refrain from talking, but it is an issue, and it's a problem that applies to Guernsey, Jersey, and Alderney. Alderney exists. It relies on gas canisters and stinking oil at the moment.
And of course, the thing is that had they sort of carried out the threat as far as Jersey was concerned, I think it would have knocked out Guernsey as well.
Well, it would. It would. There's a ripple effect. So the Channel Islands really do have to look at an energy strategy. You don't deliver these in 2 or 3 years. This is a decade or more long process, and my concerns will be in the context of Alderney that oil supplies may not be as accessible. There may be additional environmental taxes on them by the end of the decade, and we have to have something else. And I think that has to be windmills or wind farms, or in the case of Alderney, perhaps a couple of horizontal based windmills to provide just the basic energy for the island. I really think it's something that the Channel, they need to stop navel gazing and strategizing on.
I think one thing that one needs to be concerned about is that as the big oil producers slow down production and switch into other sources of power, inevitably the price of oil is going to go up eventually.
Exactly.
And so possibly, we had this question with Atlantis, whereby I think there was a strike price of 20 pence or something of that order to make it work. I think you've got to possibly even look at a higher strike price than that, looking at the longer term.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, Tony. But the problem is politicians look to the next 3 or 4 years. They don't tend to look beyond. But it does need political drive, and what we don't want is a sudden shock down the road where I'm putting in a planning application to have a windmill put up in my garden. I don't know how the planners would look at that, but
I've got a field that would be really good for solar.
Okay, right, well, I might come to you. but it is a serious issue, and it's not one for sort of philosophical reflection, which I'm afraid is what the energy groups have been doing today.
Yeah. Let's turn now to the UK election results last week. Seems to me that if you're a COVID leader, you appear to have done well when we look at Scotland, Wales, and of course England. So
exactly, yes, all of them have, in their different ways, led relatively successfully compared with other jurisdictions. And yes, so they've got the votes to take them home, Tony.
Yeah. What about Hartlepool? Were you surprised about that one?
I was surprised at the majority. I thought Labour would lose it, but much more marginally, frankly. And there's another one coming up, isn't there? Backley and Spen. I think the Labour MP has sort of deserted the ship and is becoming one of these doing one of these Quango things. Or
I thought she was going to be a mayor.
The mayor, sorry. Mayor. That's
you use the term mayor for either gender, can you?
Yes. It used to be a term mayoress, but I think it's been abolished.
The other interesting thing, whilst up in the northeast, was that Tees Valley result for the mayor there. I mean, incredible.
Yes, he seems to be doing a very good job in the sense that they've landed quite a lot of government funding, Freeport, things like that, which is certainly going to help if it provides the jobs. It's important. And you see, the other thing we tend to forget is that a lot of people in the northeast of England did buy their council houses.
Yeah,
they are homeowners.
Yeah,
and so they have a deeply vested interest, if you like, that their property should not just maintain its value and increase value, and clearly more commerce and jobs, the better. Increases house prices. So they're natural conservative working class supporters.
Yeah, well, this is the whole point, isn't it? Now people are saying that the Labour Party represent the intellectual elite. And the Tories are now the working class party.
Well, that's right. I mean, the Labour is students, academics, intellectuals, and as one blunt man from Hartlepool said, we don't know anything about them. But there we are.
Tell me, how is it that Boris still appeals to people despite various accusations of sleaze, cronyism, and wallpaper?
Well, if you look at this historically, if you look at someone like Churchill, or Lloyd George, I mean, their personal financial affairs were much worse in that sense than Boris. I mean, the point is, on these, the taxpayer hasn't paid these particularly. If he has borrowed, if someone has paid, well, people aren't interested. And in the big picture, what are they? Hundreds of thousands. They're not millions.
No.
So people are. It's not important in people's agenda. But I think people rather like his sort of natural bumbling way, I think.
And what's wrong with the odd lie?
Well,
don't they all do it? Don't they all do
precisely,
it?
Yes. I mean, I go back on all of them, but they've all done it. I think he has more annoyance and hatred from the media than certainly any other prime minister since Lady Thatcher. So he's not liked by the media, and they will always go for him. But he's got broad shoulders. He'll sort of push it away, frankly.
Just bounces off. Pleased to see he has had a partial haircut.
Well, yes, an attempted one anyway.
Let's conclude about looking at Scottish independence. Gordon Brown, coming up with a think tank, quote, our Scottish future, unquote, wants to see all the numbers involved in them going independent in terms of their ability to actually survive.
Well, of course he's absolutely right on that, and Nicola Sturgeon, economics, finance, and mathematics aren't her strong area. She has a passion. It's almost a religion for her independence. But when you go down to the mechanics of how this is done, over what period, what the impact is on taxpayer, on business, it looks a very, very shaky foundation. And I don't see the European Commission coming, being the cavalry coming to the rescue, frankly. They have bigger and more challenging matters to worry about.
Yeah. So there we are. So I think that just about concludes it, Robert. Been a pleasure to have a chat with you as ever.
Right. Thanks a lot then, Tony. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.